Ruth lost everything. Her husband died, leaving her with no children, no home, no role in society, worthless in her time and culture. The choices she did make changed her life and eventually the whole world. With no children who would eventually provide for them, widows like Ruth, her mother-in-law Naomi, and her sister-in-law Orpah in this time and place were worthless by human standards. Ruth listened as Naomi begged the young women to go back to their families, as she intended to go back to her homeland. Naomi had migrated to Moab with a husband and sons to avoid a famine. Now, years later, she had no one left. She knew she had no future to offer them, and that her people discouraged marriage with foreigners and would look down on them. She told her daughters-in-law to remain in their own land, to go to their mothers' homes. They resisted the idea, but finally Orpah turned back. Ruth insisted on continuing with Naomi to a land she had never seen, to a people she did not know. She gave Naomi the only thing she had, herself. Ruth insisted that she had chosen to follow Naomi's God. "Don't urge me to go back. Where you go, I will go. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. May nothing but death separate us." The journey of 40 kilometers represented a huge challenge to two lone women. They had no protector and little money. They must struggle in order to reach Naomi's city. But once they arrived, they still needed to find a way to survive. The abundance of her city made Naomi feel bitter and empty. They had nothing and no one to care for them, but somehow God would provide. They had arrived during a joyous barley harvest. God had indeed revisited Naomi's people. Ruth found she could glean the leftovers from harvested fields. It was allowed as a last means of desperate support for the poor and the widows. But the people had frequently rebelled against God's law, and her safety was not guaranteed. The lowly work brought no sign of self-pity in Ruth. When the landowner Boaz arrived and saw Ruth, he asked, "Who is she?" His workers answered, "She is the Moabite foreigner, Naomi's daughter-in-law." Boaz had heard of her. She was gaining a reputation of faithfulness to Naomi that was slowly earning her respect. He introduced himself and told her to drink from the water jar when she was thirsty. Ruth's heart overflowed from such kindness from a stranger. Realizing she had no position in her new society, she asked Boaz, "Why are you being so kind to me, a foreigner?" He told her he had heard of her loyalty and kindness to her mother-in-law. "May the Lord God, under whose wings you have come for refuge, reward your work." She said, "Let me find favor in your sight. You have comforted me and have spoken kindly to me, though I am not like one of your maidservants." He told her to stay with his people during the rest of the harvest. Boaz fed her with his workers, so much food she had some left over to take back to Naomi. Knowing the dangers to a woman alone, Boaz instructed his workers not to mistreat her and to leave extra grain for her. At the end of the day, a tired Ruth was thrilled with her harvest. Enough grain for 5 days. She was excited to show Naomi what God had provided. When Naomi saw the barley, she blessed God. It would be nearly impossible for one person to glean so much. Naomi asked, "How did you get so much in one day? Where did you work?" Ruth said, "A man named Boaz has many fields and was so kind to me." Naomi exclaimed, "This man is a distant relative, and he is showing kindness not only to us, but also to our dead husbands." Glad of a way to provide for them, Ruth continued to follow the workers of Boaz to gather grain throughout the weeks of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. One day, Naomi offered an idea to Ruth. She explained about an ancient law that wasn't practiced much but might be of use to them. The law called on a near relative to raise up children for a dead family member. In doing so, the man became a family redeemer, a rescuer, so that the family name would not die out. In this way, Naomi wanted to find Ruth a husband. Ruth agreed to follow Naomi's advice. Naomi had Ruth clean up and put on her best clothes. Then she instructed her, "Go to the threshing floor and lie at the feet of Boaz after everyone has settled for the night. He will tell you what to do." This was the same as a proposal of marriage, which was unconventional, especially in that time. She didn't know how Boaz would react. Would he reject her? Winnowing grain was a festive time for landowners, after the years of drought especially so. Boaz and his workers lay down to rest, both to protect the grain and to take advantage of as many hours of work as possible. Ruth hid at his feet, an obvious and yet cautious act. In the night, Boaz turned and discovered Ruth. She said as Naomi had told her, "You are a close relative, a family redeemer. I ask you to take me under your wing and protect me." These words reflected the blessing that Boaz gave her the day they met as he acknowledged her faith in God. "May God bless you, Ruth. You show family loyalty by not running after a younger man. I will do what is necessary, so everyone knows you are honorable." Perhaps Boaz reflected on his mother Rahab, who, like Ruth, had converted from a foreign god to embrace their God. He saw in Ruth the same faith in God that made her a believer, not by birth, but by choice. Despite the bold act on Ruth's part, Boaz proved to be honorable, not taking advantage of her, but protecting her. In the morning, Boaz sent Ruth back to Naomi with a gift of grain. He wanted to deal with the situation immediately. In order to offer permanent protection to Ruth, to redeem her, he would have to buy the land of her deceased husband's family and marry her. This would buy her out of poverty and widowhood, redeeming and protecting her from life's hardships. Boaz knew that one man was a closer relative to Naomi and would have first choice of rescuing this widowed daughter-in-law and the family's land. Boaz went to the city gate, waited for the relative, and gathered town elders as witnesses to their discussion. At first, the closer relative wanted the property, but when Boaz explained about Ruth and marrying her, the relative gave his shoe as a symbolic act that Boaz could stand in his place as the one to rescue the family in this situation. Boaz could marry her and provide for her. The elders not only witnessed the transaction, but also sent Boaz away with a blessing for his new bride. Boaz married Ruth and extended care and protection also to Naomi. God soon blessed, and a son was born. He was the joy and promise of Naomi, a promise of a future and a second chance on life for Ruth. Little did they know, he was a promise for the nation as well. He would become the grandfather of of a great king who would be a renewal of promise for the country. Like Boaz redeemed Ruth into a new life, God uses this story of ordinary people to show his desire to redeem, buy, and protect all people. The mixed blood Boaz inherited from his mother and the mingled blood of marrying Ruth, a foreigner, is a heritage passed down many generations to the ultimate Redeemer, Jesus Christ, who reaches out to all people to take us in and give us a new chance at life. No matter what has occurred in our lives, widowhood or bad choices, he is there. Like Ruth, we must choose whether to hold on to our old lives or to move towards rescue. Jesus redeems lives that have not been perfect. Ruth is a picture of Jesus' words in Matthew 10:39. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it.